A diver was slowly gliding through the ocean, filming the colorful sea life around him. Everything was calm until a flash of white moved awkwardly through the seaweed up ahead. He stopped, heart skipping a beat. Carefully, he adjusted his camera and zoomed in. At first, he thought it might just be a big fish or maybe a piece of trash drifting in the current. But something felt off. It was moving with intent, but its motion was clumsy and odd. This wasn't normal. Curious and alert, he swam closer. Something about the water felt colder now and his heart started to race. Whatever it was big, much bigger than anything he expected to run into out here. In the dim blue light, he could make out a large white shape tangled in seaweed. His mind raced. What was this thing? He had to know. Despite the knot forming in his gut, he kept moving forward with the camera. Every instinct told him to be careful, maybe even turn back, but something inside pushed him to get a closer look. When he finally got close, he froze. His breath caught in his throat. It was a large animal, and its head was stuck in something bright orange, a traffic cone. He stared, stunned. It didn't make any sense. This powerful, wild creature trapped in something so out of place down here. He hovered in the water, heart pounding, watching the animal thrash around in confusion, its legs flailing helplessly. But this diver wasn't just anyone. His name was Daniel, a marine biologist who'd spent years exploring the ocean's depths. That day, he'd been out filming coral reefs for a documentary. The sea had always been his second home. Since childhood, the ocean had been where he felt most at peace. For him, diving wasn't just work, it meant something more. For a few seconds, Daniel just stared, forgetting to breathe. He had no idea what to do. The animal was panicking now, and every wild movement sent a wave of fear through his chest. It could easily hurt him. He knew that one wrong move might put him in real danger. But even with that fear, something deeper kicked in. He had to help. He raised his camera and hit record. No one would have believed this without seeing it. As the animal thrashed around, Daniel's mind suddenly drifted back to a moment he'd never been able to forget. He remembered swimming beside his little brother, James, on a sunny summer afternoon. Daniel was 15 back then and James was 13. The sea had always felt like their playground, and that day the waves had seemed perfect. They swam out farther than usual, laughing and splashing without a care. But everything changed in an instant. The current shifted and Daniel remembered the strange pull of the water tugging them both away from shore. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal, just something they could power through, but the rip current kept getting stronger. They couldn't fight it. He could still see the panic in James's eyes when he realized they were in trouble. Daniel had tried to stay calm, telling James to swim sideways, but fear had already taken hold of him. James was gasping, fighting against the current and slipping farther out. Daniel had grabbed for him, catching his arm, desperate to hold on. But the ocean was too strong. With one final pull, it tore James away. Daniel had screamed his name and pushed forward with everything he had, but it was no use. James vanished beneath the waves, and Daniel was left alone in the water, helpless. That moment stayed with him. The guilt never really left. For years, Daniel had carried the weight of that day, convinced he could have done more. The ocean became both his refuge and his reminder. Every dive brought memories of James, the one person he lost in the very waters he now studied. In some way, Daniel always felt his brother was still out there, watching quietly from the deep. And now, seeing this animal stuck and struggling, something inside him stirred. He couldn't help James back then, but maybe, just maybe, he could help now. The bright orange traffic cone was jammed tightly over the animal's head. It couldn't see, and it kept bumping into things, clearly disoriented. Daniel didn't know how long it had been like this, but the poor thing was wearing itself out fast. Each panicked movement seemed weaker than the last. Still, one question hung in his mind. What kind of animal was it? To find out, he needed to get closer. But he hesitated. The animal was big, far too big to manage on his own. Getting too close could go wrong fast. But as he watched it struggle, something shifted in him. This felt like a second chance. He couldn't change the past, but he could try now. He had to. He swam in a little closer, trying not to alarm the creature. Grabbing his camera again, he made sure to catch every second. His heart was racing, but his thoughts stayed sharp. As he got nearer, the animal's shape became clearer, and what he saw made his blood run cold. It wasn't some strange sea creature like he'd assumed. It was something he never expected to see underwater. A bear, a massive polar bear, struggling beneath the surface with a traffic cone stuck on its head. Daniel froze in disbelief, then quickly backed away and shot up to the surface for air. What was a bear doing out here, under the water? He watched from above as the bear thrashed around below. It kept shaking its head and bumping into things, unable to make sense of its surroundings. This powerful animal, built for icy landscapes and long swims across the Arctic, was now trapped and blind because of a piece of plastic. Daniel felt a sharp ache in his chest. The bear looked completely lost and scared. At the surface, Daniel tried to think. He needed to act quickly. He couldn't just swim away and leave it like this, but he also knew he couldn't handle this alone. The bear needed help, and fast. As he floated there, catching his breath, he made one decision for sure. Whatever happened next, he would keep filming. No one would ever believe this without seeing it. He also knew how dangerous a polar bear could be. Even weak and disoriented, it was still a wild animal. But Daniel's mind was made up. He couldn't let another life slip through his fingers. Not this time. Taking a steadying breath, he dove back down. The bear was still floundering, its large body moving slowly, shaking its head, trying desperately to get free. Daniel swam toward it, careful to stay just out of reach. Every part of him screamed to be cautious, but his heart pushed him forward. He had to try. Gently, he began nudging the bear, guiding it in the right direction. He didn't touch it, just used his movements to steer it little by little toward the shore. The bear, clearly worn out, didn't resist. It followed his lead slowly and clumsily. The swim felt endless, but eventually the bear's paws found the wet sand. It wobbled as it stepped forward, still unable to see, with the cone stuck on its head. But it was out of the water now, finally back on land. Daniel broke the surface, his chest burning from the swim as he made his way onto shore. The bear was out of the water now, but that was only part of the battle. The cone still had to come off. Daniel knew there was no way he could do that alone. It was far too risky, and without the right tools, he could get seriously hurt. Or worse. Once on the sand, Daniel grabbed his phone and quickly called the local wildlife rescue team. His hands were shaking as he spoke to the operator, trying to explain what he had just witnessed. They told him a team would be dispatched right away. As he ended the call, he turned to check on the bear. It was still moving, but every step looked harder than the last. Its legs dragged with exhaustion, and after a few unsteady steps, it collapsed into the sand, breathing heavily. But a moment later, it forced itself back up and kept moving inland. Daniel's chest tightened as he watched. The bear looked weak, lost, and clearly hungry. It was hard to watch such a strong animal brought so low. Each time it stumbled or fell, Daniel felt it deep in his gut. This wasn't just about the bear anymore. It had become something more personal. Maybe he couldn't save James all those years ago, but he could be here now. Maybe that meant something. About an hour later, the rescue truck arrived. A group of workers in green uniforms jumped out, moving quickly and calmly. They came prepared, carrying tranquilizers and large nets. Daniel waved them down and explained what had happened. The rescuers looked at him in disbelief. If the bear wasn't standing right there, struggling in the sand, they probably wouldn't have believed him at all. One of the team members gave Daniel a look and asked why he'd stayed so close to the bear. Daniel just gave a small shrug. He didn't know how to explain it. Not fully. How could he put into words that this was about more than just an animal? That this moment had brought back memories and emotions he hadn't faced in years? As the rescue team got to work, a group of tourists walking along the beach noticed the scene. Their eyes widened as they saw the polar bear still wearing the traffic cone like a mask. Phones came out right away. People started snapping pictures and recording videos, whispering to each other in disbelief. It was something none of them had ever expected to see. The bear was already uneasy, and the sudden noise from the crowd only made things worse. It startled, stumbling backward before awkwardly turning and heading straight for the water again. Daniel's heart jumped. The bear was heading back into danger, confused and panicked. He waved his arms and quietly urged the tourists to back away as the rescue team sprang into action, raising their tranquilizer guns and getting into position. One of them took a shot, but missed. The dart zipped past just as the bear splashed into the shallow waves. It growled low and thrashed in the water, clearly scared and unsure of where to go. Its movements were frantic. It didn't know what was happening, only that it wanted to get away. The rescuers moved carefully, trying not to scare it more while still lining up for another shot. Daniel stood frozen, his nerves tight. He just wanted this to end safely, for everyone. Before they could fire again, the bear lunged forward, crashing into a cluster of rocks near the shoreline. The impact sent branches and debris flying. The team held still, waiting for the right second. Then one of them took a deep breath, steadied the aim, and fired again. This time, the dart landed. The bear gave a heavy grunt, then took a few slow steps before its body swayed. After a few tense seconds, it finally collapsed onto the rocky beach. Its sides rose and fell slowly, its breathing deep but calm. The team rushed in without hesitation. They moved around the bear gently, checking its condition and preparing to remove the cone. Daniel stood a few feet back, watching. A wave of relief hit him, but it was mixed with something else. Something heavier. The bear was safe now, but the weight inside him hadn't lifted like he thought it would. One of the rescuers looked over and thanked Daniel for making the call in time. They asked if he wanted to stay nearby while they helped the bear. He nodded quietly, not trusting himself to say much. As they worked to free the animal, Daniel stood at the edge of the shore, eyes fixed on the ocean. As the rescue team gently worked the traffic cone off the bear's head, Daniel stood back and kept filming. The cone had been stuck so tightly, it had left marks in the bear's fur and even some raw patches on its skin, proof of how much the animal had gone through. The team moved quickly, checking its vital signs, pulse, breathing, and general condition. They spoke softly to each other, nodding when they confirmed that while the bear was clearly weak and underfed, it still had enough strength to recover. Daniel didn't get too close. He kept the camera steady, capturing every moment. It all felt so surreal, like something out of a dream. He knew people would only believe this story if they saw it for themselves. The bear lay motionless, its chest slowly rising and falling with deep, steady breaths. It was finally resting, finally free. As Daniel watched, his thoughts drifted back to James again, but this time the feeling was different. Watching the bear lie there, safe and calm, something shifted inside him. He'd been able to help this time. He couldn't bring James back, but today he'd made a difference. For the first time in years, he felt a quiet kind of peace settle in. The pain of losing James would always be there, but now he could see. Some things, like the ocean's pull, weren't his fault. He couldn't control everything, but today he had taken action, and it mattered. An hour later, the bear began to stir. Everyone backed off slowly, giving it space. Daniel kept recording, holding his breath just like the rest of the team. No one knew how the bear would react. It was still a wild animal, And though the tranquilizers were wearing off, the situation could still turn fast. The bear blinked slowly, sniffing the air as it woke. It rose to its feet carefully, pausing to get its balance. For the first time in days, it could see clearly again. It looked around, taking in the people nearby, but there was no fear. No growling. Just quiet awareness. The bear stood tall, shook off gently, and seemed, for a brief moment, almost calm, maybe even thankful in its own way. Then, without warning, the bear took off. It sprinted across the beach and headed straight for the nearby forest. Its movements were strong and sure, like nothing had ever happened. Daniel and the rescue team stood there silent, watching in awe as the bear disappeared into the trees. Its white fur faded into the distance until it was completely gone. Everyone let out a breath they hadn't realized they were holding. The bear was safe now, and they'd done everything they could. Daniel stayed still, a small smile forming on his face. He'd just witnessed something unforgettable. Watching the bear run free felt like the end of a chapter, not just for the animal, but for him too. The weight he'd carried for so long didn't feel quite as heavy anymore. He couldn't go back and save James, but today he'd saved a life. And that meant something. As the team started packing up their gear, one of them clapped Daniel on the back and thanked him. They laughed and said the video he recorded was definitely one for the books. Daniel nodded, still deep in thought. They were right. Without the footage, no one would have believed it. But it was all real. In the days that followed, Daniel shared the video online, and it exploded. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. It spread across social media with headlines saying things like, "No one would believe this if it wasn't on video." News outlets ran the story on repeat, the bear stumbling with a traffic cone on its head, the rescue, the tense moments, and finally, its return to the wild. The world was moved, not just by how strange the story was, but by the heart behind it. In the weeks after, Daniel found himself rewatching the video of the bear running into the trees. Each time, it brought him a little more peace. What he did that day wasn't just about helping an animal, it helped him too. It gave him a chance to let go, even just a little. He still missed James. He always would. But now he could look back and know that in one moment that really mattered, he'd made a difference. What an incredible story. If you could talk to Daniel, what would you say to him? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real moments that remind us what's possible when we choose to care.